Buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a la rueda de prensa que va a ofrecer a continuación Dame Ellen MacArthur, Premio Princesa de Asturias de Cooperación Internacional. En primer lugar, la señora MacArthur les dirigirá unas palabras y a continuación abriremos el turno de preguntas. Recuerden, por favor, que deben levantar la mano, les pasaremos un micrófono y tendrán que indicar su nombre y el medio para el que trabajan. Les rogamos además que silencien sus teléfonos móviles. Gracias. Adelante, señora MacArthur.
Thank you. First of all, it's a great honour to be chosen for the International Cooperation Award. The work that we've been focusing on over the last 12 years with the Foundation is all around the circular economy, and many people think that the circular economy is a waste and recycling agenda, but in fact it is much, much more than that. It's getting to the cause of the problems that we have in the world, particularly around materials, but ultimately it's not treating the symptoms. So much work has been around treating the symptoms of the system. And when you think of the circular economy, perhaps the best way to understand it is when you compare it to our current linear economy, where we take a material out of the ground, we make something out of it, and then at the end of the life of that product gets thrown away. It's a production line, a linear system. Take, make and waste. Within a circular economy, as I say, you go to the root cause and you redesign the system, you redesign the way we make things and we use things. And that straight line turns into a circle. So you design out waste and pollution, because in today's world, why would we ever design anything that would become waste? You keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, so you repair and you regenerate the products. And then ultimately, when it comes to biological materials, you regenerate nature. So you have those three principles, and if they run on renewable energy, you have a system, an economic system, that really can run in the long term. And when we think of that straight line, the linear line, one of the greatest examples, if you like, striking examples of the failure of it is plastic pollution, plastics packaging. You know, the figures are huge. Currently 80 million tonnes a year of plastic packaging is produced. And we know globally now the state of the situation when it comes to plastic pollution. We know that the numbers are really quite staggering. And that is the area that we have been focusing on for the last 7 years with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We have been working with businesses and governments all over the world to look at really helping to harness business innovation around materials science and different business models, and also working with government policy. And ultimately what we seek to achieve is to level the playing field and to help create enabling policy to enable that playing field to be leveled. And that's why the work we've been doing with the World Wildlife Fund around a global treaty is absolutely vital to create a global policy framework that ultimately will stop plastic pollution right at the beginning, at the root cause. Thank you.
Abrimos el turno de preguntas.
Hola, Lucía Menéndez de Televisión Española. Lo primero, enhorabuena por el galardón. Yo quería saber cómo trabaja su fundación con las empresas para hacerles ver que esta economía circular es viable y es rentable. ¿De qué manera consigue que se involucren hacia este cambio de modelo productivo y económico? Gracias.
Thank you. We began with the foundation 12 years ago, and one of the very first things that we did was to produce economic studies looking at the benefits of a circular economy, the economic benefit. So not just the idea of a straight line to a circle. That was fascinating and it made sense, and a lot of businesses were very interested in that, the long-term model of that and the long-term, positive implications, but what we didn't know was the economic rationale. We produced our first study in January 2012. The figure was huge for an economic benefit, showing a value of $630 billion per year, and that was just looking at goods that cycle in more than 1 year and less than 10. We then did another study the following year, over $700 billion, and that was on faster moving consumer goods. So each time we've looked at well, obviously the rationale for a circular economy is clear. You know, we have a finite supply of resources in the world, and if our economic model uses those up, it really can't run in the long term for many reasons. So the rationale for a circular economy made sense, but the economic rationale is what we've been working on over these last 12 years. And obviously for business, that's absolutely vital.
Siguiente pregunta, por favor.
Muy buenas tardes, Pablo Álvarez de la Nueva España. Una cuestión. En ocasiones puede suceder que quizás algunos aspectos de la economía tradicional, de la economía lineal, por ejemplo, de empresas que generan cierta contaminación, pues la solución sea suprimir esas empresas o de alguna manera reconvertirlas, que se pierdan puestos de trabajo y que haya territorios enteros que se queden muy verdes y muy limpios, pero sin personas, porque no haya medios de subsistencia. Mi pregunta es si quizás hay que buscar fórmulas que respetando el objetivo final de ser lo más respetuosos posibles con la naturaleza y hacer una economía sostenible, tengan en cuenta también este tipo de, digamos, de efectos secundarios. Muchas gracias.
That's a very good question. At the Foundation, from the outset, we have always engaged with the economy and engaged with business to try to create the shift that we know is so vital for the future economy to function in the long term. I think it's very clear now that business as usual can't run in the long term for many reasons, from the finite supply of materials, from the pollution that the linear system creates. But ultimately, as you so correctly say, the businesses are the economy. The businesses provide jobs, and the businesses provide the economic opportunities for people to live within, and that's absolutely vital. So from the Foundation's perspective, shifting what we have now today, that linear economy, and working with those businesses that create employment, shifting that system towards one of circularity, where those businesses can survive, is what we're focusing on. And, you know, we work with thousands of organizations around the world today, and the majority are not yet circular, but they're on a journey towards that. And so our goal is not to stop everything that exists today, but it's to shift what we have towards that circular model to get to a place where the economy itself, as it functions, is making the world a better place. If you build in those principles, if, for example, you use regenerative agriculture when you're producing food, if, as some of the biggest players in the international food market, you procure your goods so that they are regeneratively farmed, then you get to a place where, through buying food from that brand, if you like, the world is actually improving, rather than you buy a bit less to slow the degradation. And so at the Foundation, it's very much our focus to work with leading businesses around the world, as well as policy and government, and shift the modus operandi towards the circular model, whereby the economic function itself makes the world a better place. Is that okay?
Siguiente pregunta, por favor. Voy a plantearle yo una cuestión. Quizá nos podría comentar cómo cree que se podría atraer a países en los que el medio ambiente o la sostenibilidad no forma parte de la conversación o de la agenda, o que no están tan avanzados económicamente. ¿Cómo se puede atraer a esos países a este tipo de cuestiones?
I think there are several elements that spring to mind. The first of which is many of those countries that have not developed at the speed that much of the developed world has are actually closer to circular principles in the outset. the linear economy is a product of industrialization. 100 years ago, we didn't really make waste. We had materials and they fed back into the system. They were all produced to last. Now we have this disposability and waste creation through our economic model itself. So I think many of those emerging markets are closer to circularity now, and they have the opportunity to leapfrog the linear system we have today. Some of the challenges are that we live in a globalized world. Many of those emerging markets, when it comes to plastic pollution, for example, are bombarded with tiny plastic sachets, which they have no ability to process or collect or sort or valorize in any way. Part of that is that country doesn't have the collection system for that plastic, and nor can a tiny corner of a sachet really be collected. But also the plastic itself was never made to have value. The plastic was made just to keep the powder fresh, or the washing powder or whatever may sit in that sachet. So from an emerging markets perspective, there is an opportunity to leapfrog, but the system has to work. And when we talk about the systemic change that's needed to get to a circular economy, it's all the actors in the value chain. It's the producers of those products that often aren't in that country, working together with the policy and the material processors and the marketeers and the financiers to shift that system. So there is a massive opportunity around circular economy. We at the Foundation very firmly believe that. Many of those countries have an opportunity to develop in a more circular way rather than a linear way, and understanding the economics around that is absolutely vital for that to happen.
Thank you.
Sí, al hilo de la cuestión que le planteaba Rubén, existe quizá una contradicción en el sector productivo que en España y en Asturias nos afecta. Los países que son más respetuosos con la economía verde, por ejemplo, pues lógicamente tienen sistemas de producción que son más caros que los países en los que no se respeta, y entonces esos países que son respetuosos tienen menos posibilidades o menos competitivos en los mercados. ¿Habría que establecer algún tipo de arancel, algún tipo de medida de carácter global que evite estas contradicciones y que de alguna manera estimule y premie la economía verde?
I think that's exactly the point that makes the global treaty so important, that we live in a globalized world and we make products in some countries and sell them into other countries, and the sorting systems, the collection systems are incredibly developed in some and almost non-existent in others. And we were really shocked when we did our study 7 years ago looking at plastic packaging flows to find that 7 years ago, when we felt we were doing quite well with recycling, we were actually only recycling 2% of 78 million tonnes into the same quality of plastic. 32% of all plastic packaging of that 78 million tonnes was leaking into the environment. And you need, as I said in the opening statement, really you need to level the playing field. You need global policy to align, and you need business innovation to be supported and developed to enable the global system to shift, to make sure that the plastic that is produced has value. And in emerging markets, things that have value are collected and are fed into a system. The reality is today most plastic packaging was never ever designed to have that value. So when we talk about the inequalities, yes, there are different systems, there are greener countries and less green countries, but ultimately we need to create a level playing field globally to enable the introduction of a plastics economy that can run in the long term. And that can't happen in one country, in one territory, because the plastic doesn't come from that country or that territory. It needs to be a harmonized system, which is why the global treaty is so very, very important.